So let's go ahead and demonstrate creating a new contract. So we'll do four things. We'll define a new contract. We'll associate that project contract with a few projects. Then we'll post some transactions to the contract. And finally, we'll invoice that contract so you can see how you can invoice multiple projects at one time through a contract. Okay, so we're going to create a new project contract, and you have seen the creation of a project contract just out of necessity when we were creating projects in the earlier courses. We're going to take a little different route here. So to do so, we're going to go up to the navigation pane, and under modules, we'll go to project management and accounting. And then from here, we'll go to the projects folder and then project contracts. So we're at the project contract list page, which is basically a list of all the existing project contracts. So to create a new project contract, you'll be up on the action menu and you'll just hit the new button. And then from here, basically you can define a name if you want to. I'm going to leave it blank because I'll show you a little piece of functionality that I like. And then you can define a funding type, which there's 4 different funding types, and we'll talk about the other funding types when we get into the advanced course, but for right now we'll select customer. When we select customer, that means that when we hit the drop down for funding sources, it's going to be a list of all our existing customers. So I'll just pick brakes and gears, which is the customer we'll be using for this contract, and the sales currency is the default currency that was set up on the customer account, which is USD in this case. So we'll hit OK. And then from here, it brings you into the details of the contract, and if we just look at the general tab, we can see that, yep, our contract ID is there, which was 105, and that was auto-generated from the number sequence reference for contracts that's under the project parameters. And then the default currency is USD, which we saw in the previous pane. There's an option here to lock sales currency, which will force you, when you're entering any sort of project transaction, that you have to use USD as your sales currency. If you don't want to lock it, you can toggle that to no. Invoice frequency, this is basically an informational field. There is one area where this is used, and it comes down to forecasting. When you put in project forecast, there's a field, it's a date field that will take your invoice frequency and it will suggest the billing date for a forecast. So for instance, if you pick weekly and you define today as your forecast date, it will say +7 for invoice date. Sales tax group, that value is pulling in here from our customer account, but this is the sales tax group that's associated with this contract, and in coordination with the item sales tax group, that's how you calculate a sales tax. Price group, if you want to assign the contract to a price group to get the sales pricing off of, you can do so. And then here's the invoice template that you'll use for this specific contract. One area that I wanted to talk towards right now about the different fast tabs at the bottom of the contract details here is the funding sources. So if we take a look here, our customer that we added as the funding source is displaying, and there's information that you can assign at the funding source level here. So one being the invoice format. So there's 3 different formats that you can choose from. A detailed invoice was going to show you all the transactions that are invoiced to the customer, and then you have a summary, which is basically going to break things down into a summary view. I believe it does hours, expenses, items, on accounts, and fees. Those are the summary buckets. And then there's the summary invoice by category, which is self-explanatory. But the thing to call out here is that you just don't assign a funding source and call it good. You can have multiple funding sources. So if I wanted to have a split billing situation where we bill one customer for 60% and another customer for 40%, you can add a funding source. But B, each funding source can have its own specific details, and these details are important when it comes to the billing aspect and the ledger posting aspect as well. When it comes to invoicing and estimating on a fixed price project. So just so you can see, we can go to the details here, and for this specific customer, We have all the different funding source details that we can set up. So the address information is coming in, and that's pulling off the customer. If you have a different invoice address for this contract that you want, you can set that up at the customer level and then select it right here on the invoice address field. The payment tab is all the different payment terms that you want to define around this specific funding source. And you can see that we have net 30 for terms of payment, and the rest of the stuff is just pulling in. All the default information that you see comes in from the customer itself when we assign it to the contract. And then there's quite a few other fields on the other tab around the contact for the specific customer, or the customer requisition that you want to define manually, or customer reference information that you can define manually. But the key area here is that you can't space out that there's financial dimensions associated with each funding source, because like I said, when you post an invoice or post an estimate, it actually doesn't use the project dimensions for some aspects of those. It looks at the funding source dimensions to pull in, and if you don't define these, you can run into some account structure issues downstream. So just make sure you're defining your financial dimensions if you have your account structure to set up to validate financial dimensions. All right, so we'll back out of here. I'm not going to define a whole lot. Then we'll get into the other features up on the action menu. So this looks pretty close to what you see at a project level, but the first tab we'll take a look at is the project contract. So you notice you can set up sales prices and cost prices at a contract level. And we took a look at this a little bit in the pricing course. A couple other pieces of setup. You can define a fixed rate agreement, which is basically a defined exchange rate between you and your funding sources. So it will actually override what the exchange rates that you have defined in the general ledger, because you have defined a fixed rate for the life of this project contract. And then you have some print management setup that you can define as well at the contract level. On the plan tab, during our overview, I said that you could take a look at all the forecasts that are associated with all the projects that are tied to this contract, and you can do that. You just have to be on the plan tab, and you can take a look at any of these. Maintain, you can cut an invoice, you can run an adjustment, you can actually create a new project right here as well, and then you have some of the other features that we'll talk about later, just accessible from the contract level. One area that I'd like to call out to is the posted transactions, where you can review any posted transactions on any projects associated with this contract. And then you have the control tab, which is basically the different statements or inquiries that you can run that would be specific to this project. So a cool one would be the project statement, because you can get a statement for all the projects associated with this contract just to see how the contract's doing. So for the demonstration, I will go ahead and just create a new project or a couple new projects associated with this contract. So I'll do so by doing that directly from the contract. So I'm on the Maintain tab, the New Group, and we'll click the Project button. And you can see that the contract ID auto-populated to 105 because that's our contract, and I created it from the contract, so it knows which contract to use. And we'll just call it Test Time and Material Project, and I'll give it a generic group. And we'll hit Create. And while I'm on this project, I'll go ahead and just post some hours to it. I'll just say we had 10 hours worth of project management work, and I think we're billing out at like $350 an hour, so $3,500 we'll be billing the customer for that work. So if I hit OK here. All right, so that was posted. Let's go back to our project, and I'll go back. I'll just get to the contract by clicking on the hyperlink. I could have went back one more time, but I'll show you that little trick. And then I'll create one more project of fixed price type associated with this contract. And we'll hit OK here. And on a fixed price project, you bill based on accounts. So we'll create an on account. We'll just try a $10,000 on account. So that will be our fixed price contract value. I'll back out of here, and I'll back out of here to get back to our contract. So one area that I don't talk towards a whole lot are the fact boxes over on the right. I usually have them hidden. but there's a couple important ones over here. So at the contract level, you can actually take a look at the related projects. So those 2 projects that I just created, you can see that they're associated with this project or this contract, and they're available for cite in the related contract or related projects fact box here. There's some other information as well. You can take a look at any of the invoices that you've cut, or costs, cash flow, billable rate, other invoicing. So, well, that's pretty cool. So you can see that we have $13,500 worth of invoiceable transactions on this project, because we had a $10,000 on account, and then $3,500 worth of time and material that we posted. And then if you get into the on-hold functionality, it'll show you an on-hold amount. So just keep in mind that there's some fact boxes that can give you some valuable information at the contract level. So what we've been doing previously is just invoicing directly from a project, but I just wanted to show you that on a contract, you can actually go to the maintain tab, and then you can hit the invoice proposal button, and it will bring you into an invoice proposal. And now you can see that we're seeing 2 transactions that span 2 projects, 150 and 151, and one's for our on accounts of 10,000, and the other one's for our hours that we posted to the time and material for $3,500. It's nice that the criteria up here allows you to just go at a contract level. You can see that you could pick a specific project if you wanted to, but I'll just leave that alone. When you're invoicing from a contract, the criteria comes up correctly. So all we have to do is hit OK here, and then it's going to create the invoice proposal based off our selected transactions, and we had them both selected. And then yeah, from here you can review your invoice proposal, and you can post. All right, so I'm not going to wait on that at all. That's basically what I wanted to show you for this demonstration. So we went in, we took a look at creating a new contract, we looked at some of the fields around it, we associated some projects with that contract, and then we booked some transactions, and we actually invoiced from the contract.